Hello, beautiful people. It's a girl, Hanifa Abdurrahman. Welcome to the Black Magic series. And today we are excited to tell you that our guest is the award-winning journalist and writer, Abubakar Adam Ibrahim. Abubakar Adam Ibrahim writes a weekly column entitled Line of Sight for DailyTrust Newspaper. His books are award-winning. In 2016, he won the Nigerian Prize for Literature with his book, Season of Crimson Blossom, his first novel. In 2018, he was announced as the winner of the Michael Elliot Award for Excellence in African Storytelling by International Center of Journalism for his report, All That Was Familiar. In 2014, his collection of short story, The Whispering Trees, was longlisted for the inaugural Etisalat Prize for Literature. He won the 2014 BBC African Performance Prize, and so many more. Let's start with, what does Black existence mean to you? How do you define Black existence?
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here, and great to chat to you again. Black existence. I don't have a definition for that, and that simply is because I don't think in terms of, I don't think of people in terms of color. For me, blackness is not something I occupy myself with as a writer. It's an identity that's been created. It's a construct, and it's been attached to people. That is unfortunate. I don't think it should have existed in the first place, but I don't feel the need to conform to some other people's labeling of me. When I wake up in the morning, I don't think of myself as a Black person waking up from sleep, and I'm going to brush my teeth the way a Black person is supposed to brush his teeth. And when I sit down to write, I don't think, I'm going to write in exactly the same way a Black person is going to write. These are constructs that I don't necessarily take into consideration. I think of stories and people in terms of how they exist in their environment, and if they happen to be in a predominantly African environment. And that again raises the question, what does an African environment mean? Because every single African space or space occupied by Africans has its own characteristics and its own essence. So I don't think it's possible to lump everything into one and just label it Black existence. So I think that is something that is tricky to define, and not something I've particularly engaged with in that sense. So Black existence, Black, I really don't, I'm not sure that is something I want to delve into per se, because I just think people are people, and nobody wakes up thinking, I'm going to do Black things or white things or things that people of my race are supposed to be doing. People do what they want to do, and that is how I see existence.
So, moving on, you're a writer and a journalist. How was your journey like when you were first starting out? What is your story? And how is your journey going?
We tend to limit ourselves by labeling things. For instance, if we say, February is for Black History Month, right? A lot of people kind of focus on celebrating blackness during that month, and beyond that month, that's the end of it. Similarly, when you talk about Black history in terms of slavery, people kind of tend to because of the repetitive use of slavery and associating it with blackness, people kind of associate that permanently with blackness, and people tend to forget that there is a history before and after slavery, and the fact that slavery is an interruption in a history and culture that has been going on for centuries before then tends to get lost on a lot of people. So definitely those labelings are counterproductive. The same way that when you label somebody with some tag, there's this pressure on them to conform to that tag, to that labeling, and all of that is counterproductive in some person. So in as much as it's vital and crucial to remember where we are and to be proud of our history and our identity, I feel, we shouldn't be confined by labels and things like that. So yeah, in that sense, I just feel like celebrating who we are and our pride and our identity should expand beyond labels and dates and definitions and things like that. Having said that, how did I start writing? I've always been interested in storytelling, something that started from a very, very early age. And I think I'm lucky to realize that is what I wanted to do with my life from quite early on. And I dedicated myself to that and developed myself. And here we are. So this is me speaking 3 books later. With several translations and countless articles and publications in anthologies and here and there. So in that sense, I think the journey has been good. I think exciting. And I don't know what expectations I had when I started writing. I just knew that I wanted to write, and the fact of writing for me was satisfying enough, and that is that. So, of course, it's a pleasure to see that people are engaged with my writing and identifying themselves in it and talking about it, and that my stories are starting conversations that people have always needed to have. So I think that is rewarding, and I'm happy about that.
Okay, what was the first story about? Was it about love or some ghost, or what was it about? And how did you find yourself picking a pen and writing the first time? What prompted it?
I'm not sure I can answer this because all of this happened a long, long time ago. I don't have a specific recollection of the first thing I wrote because it was a long time ago, because I started writing quite early. But I think the writings that I could remember very much were those in my teenage years. And as most teenagers, they were kind of tilting towards love. And a lot of fantasy as well, like supernatural beings who could sort of travel across dimensions or across travel to outer space and things like that. So I was kind of engaged with fantasy and love and things like that. Those were my earlier juvenilia. As I can remember, I think the most serious thing I wrote first. Well, I mean, not technically. Yeah, I think I wrote. Like there were things I wrote that I actually never showed anyone, so I don't have recollections of them. But I think formally, probably, I think second year of university, I had it down. The Whispering Trees, the story itself, and I think I submitted it for So probably earliest prose fiction that I've written, yes, maybe that. I'd written plays before, which were entered for competitions when I was maybe 19 or thereabout. Yeah, but I started writing early, and from my teenage years, where it was inspired by love and attraction for girls, and some poetry that I did in those days, which I've now hopefully outgrown, and I'm sure I would be probably thoroughly embarrassed about them like I decided to. But yeah, so my writing even at that age was inspired by imagination and the feelings that people have growing up and seeing adults. And then eventually in my late teens and early 20s, they kind of took on a very serious tone and became far more introspective.
Oh wow, is a teenage love story inspiration for me? Okay. So you've achieved so many things with your writing. You are an award-winning writer. Your works have been translated all over the world. You're NLNG winner. You're so many things. How satisfied are you with your writing? What keeps you going?
Well, I think, being a teenager has been very important in the lives of many writers and creatives. I think even people who are not writers will confess that during their teenage years, during those periods where they, experience attraction for the opposite sex, that there was a period of productivity, creative productivity in their lives. They wrote poems, they wrote, fascinating love letters and things like that. So I think that is pretty common. I think some people just don't outgrow that creative period and they remain creative entrepreneurs. Others get more practical and move on to other aspects of life. So in that sense, yes, I think it's important. Teenage romance, very significant for creative people. In response to your question, well, I think I've been lucky as a writer, and I put it down to being fortunate, and I've been putting the work, because I think for most people, they think writing is just sitting down one day and writing something that it shows up and you're a successful writer. It's really not like that. You have to put in the work. You have to sit down and actually do the writing. And I think that's what most people find challenging. And writing is a quiet process. You sit down somewhere and write, and 4 or 5 years later, maybe it comes out, maybe it doesn't. And I know people have been writing novels for 10 years, right? When those novels emerge, everyone thinks, they just went into a room, did magic, and novel materialized. It's really hard work. It takes a lot of time, and that is what it is. So for me, winning prizes and all of that, I mean, it's great, it's fantastic, and I'm happy that I have won some prizes. But I've always said this, and I've always maintained this, that winning a reader's heart is the most important prize any writer could aspire for. That your writing would have an impact in the life of somebody, that it would make that person think about things and, recognize themselves in your writing, in your story. I think for me that is even of greater significance than anything else. So yes, in that sense, I think I'm quite happy. But regardless of anything else, for me, writing has always been satisfying. The act of sitting down of crafting stories, of creating worlds, of experiencing the experiences of my characters and sharing these experiences with readers has always been satisfying to me. So just writing really for me is satisfying enough. And if it leads to success, to finances, to other things, all the better,
We've talked about your writing. Now let's talk about your journalism. How much do you enjoy being a journalist? Rather, tell us about Abubakar Adam Ibrahim as a journalist.
Well, journalism was a choice I made. I mean, I decided deliberately that I wanted to go into journalism. So instead of studying creative writing, for instance, because I realized quite early on that I wanted to write all my life. So instead of studying creative writing or English literature or something similar, I decided to study journalism because for me that is an important way of having an impact, accessing people's stories, and using stories for social transformation. That's at least possible. So yeah, over the last maybe 14, 15 years that I've been in journalism, I think it's been exciting, rewarding. I have found myself, enjoying it and growing in the career and winning awards as well for some of my stories and stories that I believe have an impact that humanizes people who were previously considered as statistics and data numbers. So that was a significant moment for me. But I think with journalism practice in Nigeria, it's as with everything else. I think it's problematic in the sense that journalists are badly treated, which is sort of like saying every Nigerian is badly treated in any case. But so the remuneration is bad in most cases. And I think for me the most painful aspect of journalism practice in Nigeria is, should I say, that lack of impact? Lack of impact in the sense that you put your life on the line to do a story that you believe would be, earth-shaking, that would reveal something significant and cause people to realize, we're being misgoverned or we're being mistreated, or we need to change our orientation about certain things and behave in a different way. And then you realize, people are just reading it and shrugging. That is a downer for people who go into journalism for the passion, right? And some of us went into it for the passion, stayed in it for the passion, and hoping that something is going to change. But it didn't, by and large. Once in a while you get a story that causes some kind of tremor, often not enough tremor to create the change that would require, that would be needed to move the country forward. That is problematic. But it's had its quirk, and it's been quite an experience. I've had the pleasure of meeting people in different states of society, high and the low, lowest sometimes, and the highest sometimes. And you get unique insights about things, about issues, about people, and it really is and has been quite an experience, and I enjoyed it a lot. I still do, and I still feel passionate about the job. Yeah, so I guess that's sort of in a nutshell my journey as a journalist.
Journalism, like you said, is one of the most problematic jobs in Nigeria and the world as a whole, because good journalists get harassed, arrested unnecessarily for trying to tell the truth, etc. So as a journalist, what is your most daring story? What is your most daring story? Yeah.
Of course, it's challenging, but we can't discount the culpability of journalists as well in the problems that they face as well. But there's also corruption in journalism. We all know that. We know about the brown envelope thing. It's become sort of a reputation for journalists, unfortunately. I mean, not all journalists do that, but a good number of them do so. And it's a problem. We have to acknowledge that. As the House Association, it might be so. If you are considering the thief, you should also consider the person choosing the thief, right? Yeah, so that is an issue that we have to acknowledge and put up there. In terms of challenging stories that I've done, there have been a few. I wouldn't want to go specifically into details, but my reporting trip to Maiduguri, stories on people displaced by Boko Haram stands out. There were instances of things happening and things that I came across that even till now I still can't put them out there. There were instances of covering the just crisis, for instance. Those were challenges that I had to face, and they're difficult on a personal level, just so that coming from a place like Jos and witnessing things like that, and having to report it objectively, it's difficult, but it's an occupational hazard, journalists have to face this. Fortunately for me, I think most of the time I had to work on areas that exactly put me out there. But in terms of other stories that I've done that have been difficult to do, I remember doing a story on this Nigerian guy who was killed during the attack on Kajuru Castle. That story was challenging as well as the there was this one on the tip of my mind just now. Somehow escaped. But yeah, there have been challenging stories to do. There have been a lot of difficult ones. It's something that comes with the job and something that we have to do.
What is your greatest fear? As first a human, and then a journalist, and as a writer?
Right now, my greatest fear is Nigeria. My country scares me. I am scared of my country, and that is a great tragedy for someone who loves my country the way I do to have to admit. But that is the reality. I'm scared of Nigeria. I'm scared of what it is. I mean, I hope there will be a turnaround. I've kept hoping, and because of the love I have for this country, that hope will never die. But yeah, that's what scares me the most.
The country is indeed scary. I mean, with everything happening, it seems that nothing is getting better. Finally, what words of encouragement do you have to give to Nigerians and everybody out there?
What's is that really what Nigerians need right now? We've given each other words ever since we've been in these problems. Ever since our dreams started falling apart, ever since we realized that Nigeria is not going to be the country that we hoped it to be, we've given each other words. We've taken words from the Bible, from the Quran, from religious sources and religious leaders. We've taken words from politicians who promise, who tell us everything is going to be alright soon. We've taken words from all these people. We've taken words from conmen and criminals and hypocrites and people who tell you, oh, you know, it's a passing phase. Well, I mean, if this is a passing phase, it's lasting too long. We've taken words from art, from our creativity. We've used our imaginations to reframe and rephrase and reconstruct our idea of what Nigeria should be. We've taken words to make our pains and agony palatable, and we have reached this point where we have to ask ourselves, are words enough? Are they the things that will give us this dream, this hope, this courage to survive this country? I think now is not the time for words. Now is the time for people to act. For Nigerians to realize that maybe our fate lies in our hands, that maybe this is the time to get it right, that maybe we need to go out there and get the right candidates to stand in elections, that we need to go out there and vote for the right people, not those who give us indomie or soap or salt. We need to get out there and do the right thing, put our sacrifices or put our selfish desires aside for one day, for 1 week, for 1 month, maybe for however long it takes to get it right.